thought I should make a small presentation now, not very long, but to sort of frame why we are here, and give a little bit of introduction both to the project that we are in, but also sort of a lead into to the presentations that then Jakob will then continue after me. So this brief introduction is you know, the C-Unit project is a follow-up of an earlier version, the C-Unit 1, but it's funded by the FP7, and it's to promote the cooperation between these two regions, and it will last all the way up to 2016, and it's quite a strong partnership. There are 21 organizations altogether in this partnership. If you look at the objectives, it is of course, you know, like all these Inconets, it's much about dialogue, to increase and support the dialogue between the two regions, between the ASEAN and the EU. It's also about decision making, to support to policymakers, key developments in the STI area, and also to highlight opportunities for STI cooperation for the two sort of policy-making bodies or regions. It was also about working towards social challenges, grand challenges, global challenges, you can name it in whichever way. But a key priority in this phase is also to help address issues like health, food security and safety, and water management as three areas that we have sort of singled out. But of course, grand challenges also go beyond that. You all know about climate change and all of these things. Networking to link stakeholders on both sides of the globe, to build networks, to strengthen research capacity, but also ensure that this activity and these networks, these processes are actually sustainable beyond the project. I will not go through all the technicalities of this project, but what we are doing here is linked to what we call the Work Package 4. I guess all of you know about this language of the European projects, and this includes a lot of things related to innovation studies, but quantitative analysis of research strength and cooperation patterns, quantitative analysis of strengths and opportunities, country profiles of Southeast Asian countries, analyzing innovation for cooperation, and framework conditions for research and innovation. What we have recently done in this part of the project has been to study innovation policies and instruments across 6 countries, I think it was, in Southeast Asia. And those, let's say, country studies are now being finalized and edited as a full report, a book, including a larger introductory chapter, to be published this summer on developments of innovation policy and instruments in this region. Another exercise in this has also to do with framework conditions that were defined as IPR issues, but also material transfer agreements, which is a key issue I've discovered also in life sciences. We did those 2 workshops in Bangkok in January. Wrote up the report from that, and that will be complemented by this workshop on public procurement for innovation. We will produce a small report in addition to the video file, and put them together also in a small booklet, on top of which we will also, as nicely said here, analyze also the impact of the ASEAN Economic Community for 2015, and the idea is to put that also as a chapter in that book, as that kind of economic integration has a lot to do with framework for innovation as they proceed. So we will see. So anyway, this is not only about public procurement. The context is also cooperation in science and technology across these two regions. And I took this definition of cooperation in STI from the expert group in 2012 that both Jakob and I were part of. To understand it, or a kind of a sort of definition, is that international cooperation has to do with all kinds of cooperation, coordination, investments, transfer of knowledge, and so on and so forth, by public and private researchers, public institutions, all the kind of performers on the one hand. And then on the other hand, it has to do with policy frameworks, funding, and so on, to support the collaboration between those performers. And with that, we are also into the policy issue that we have to deal with today. As it struck my mind, that in public procurement for innovation, of course, it also has to do with cooperation between innovators, but maybe even more cooperation between policymakers. And we will come back to that later today. But for example, the way we discovered in the material transfer workshop was the importance of the Nagoya Protocol on biodiversity, and how that sort of shapes the cooperation very much through this global regulation. The Montreal Protocol, likewise, on the ozone layer, that serves the basis as a sort of regulatory framework on an international basis. So we then have procurement cooperation between regional national networks of procurers, for example, and networks of collaborative innovators. But the procurement relation as such is maybe not to be seen as a cooperation. That's more a transaction or a contract, or I don't know. That will be discussed later. And then in this context, we also see, or we have to deal with increasing internationalization of R&D, and what kind of implications this has for that kind of demand-side policy that we are dealing with. For example, we have multiple and strong drivers for internationalization. I don't want to go through all of that. It's a long list of this. And market opportunities are, of course, key among them. Much of this internationalization is therefore responses to national market opportunities. For example, the strongest maybe example is China, the China case. But this, again, is often driven or organized through global value chains and global innovation networks. And on top of that, we have the context of global challenges, climate change, food security, etc. And then, you can ask the question, where does this sort of leave the public procurement for innovation when you sort of open it up not only on a national basis, but on a sort of a global basis? I want to conclude this with just showing you a couple of things that I wrote out from a recent OECD publication. How this is sort of changing, and this is the initiative to stimulate demand for innovation among other areas of science policy, and its change between in the period between 2012 and 2014. It's from the Science and Technology Outlook. Many of you know this publication, and the degree of change, perceived change, is on the y-axis. And on the X is the all numbers of policy areas and instruments that has been sort of defined in the toolbox. And you see the way they measure this. I don't want to go into details because we don't have the time, and I maybe wouldn't even answer it. But you see on the red, the bunch of demand-side instruments has changed in a way that it has become more widely used. But the public procurement for R&D and innovation has been even more so. So that has been, it's sort of an indicator of increasing use of this particular instrument or policy. Then, in a recent study by NESTI, the OECD group on indicators, they are now into a quite interesting study on how to measure how to measure public procurement for innovation. So they do it's a fantastic broad report. I include a couple of graphs from there, and you see how the values and numbers of contract award actions within this context of public procurement are distributed across countries, both in terms of value and in terms of numbers. And you see how they, for example, the difference between United Kingdom and France as the sort of biggest actors. United Kingdom is very high in value, but few contracts. And the opposite is the case for France. And those are the biggest players. But then you have a number of others who use this instrument to a lesser degree.
So that's all contract award actions, not for innovation only.
Yeah. No.
So I wouldn't call it an instrument here. I mean,
No.
that's public procurement activity. It's not done in order to spur innovation.
Yeah.
It's just public procurement activities, which I find it fascinating.
Yeah. And also they try to measure the innovation content of all of this activity. And this is the way across sectors. And this is the picture that they come up with. I will encourage you to visit this publication, and I can circulate it after this meeting. But you see here that the degree of innovation component in all of these contracts varied significantly, and of course what they term here as research and development and IT and so on is by far the biggest. But this is a sort of elusive way to look at it. So what I hope that we could do today is to address some of these issues, institutional conditions for this. I wouldn't let's not call it instrument, but a policy. You can return to that, how to call it. But there are a number of things that we should return to during discussions, both during the presentations and also afterwards. But I think I would like to remind you of the context that this is taking place also in a broader international cooperation context. So I think that we should be able to discuss also how to sort of position this kind of policy in that kind of context. So I stop here.